is awfully early in the morning, but I'm going somewhere really cool, and can't wait to tell you guys about it. But let's hit the road.
How's it going?
It's going alright.
How you been, man?
Oh, I'm living. I'm hanging in there.
Jarob, dude, thank you, man, for inviting me out here. This is absolutely amazing. I'm totally blown away. I mean, I had a chance to see you work with the camera and see you document Bethel Baptist. Tell me a little bit about this place and what you're doing.
This church was bombed twice before the 16th Street church was bombed. The difference is that there was loss of life at 16th Street and not here. I also know that this is where the movement was getting going, the civil rights movement. I know that Reverend Shuttlesworth did a lot here, worked through this congregation. And that's basically where this is all coming in, is that we're working in conjunction, we as in the National Park Service, HABS, which the Historic American Building Survey, are working in a partnership with the Civil Rights Consortium and the Civil Rights Institute to go through and do a baseline documentation of all the civil rights sites that are part of the Civil Rights Trail, which is National Park Service.
Wow. When we had our last interview, we had talked about you using film and that you were getting ready to start using phase ones, and you're using a phase one now. Tell me a little bit of the process now that you've film is not as much as a priority as far as the documentation, because digital has now been accepted in the National Archives. So tell me a little bit about the process. How's it changed now?
It's funny because realistically, what I'm learning, I thought that this process was going to speed things up a little bit.
Really?
And maybe it will down the road, because this is the first project we're doing with this equipment. Yeah, so this whole civil rights project is the first overall comprehensive project that we are doing with this equipment.
Wow.
But the actual process of taking the photograph still seems to be about the same amount of time. The only difference is that we are able to see the results, judge that it's all good, and do some minor edits on it. So from that standpoint, I think the back end in terms of editing and getting these photos ready for print will be a little bit quicker, because I'm able to do some of it right on site. We're now developing film, so that time is cut out of the equation, and we're not scanning. That is a part of the process that took up a lot of time.
Yeah.
And also, when you scan the film, because you have to scan it to certain tolerances, it took a lot longer to reset the values, re-hedge up the values, and get it ready for print.
Right.
All of that's out of the equation right now. So as far as I'm concerned, I think that it will be, the process overall will be quicker. But that's yet to be determined. But I think it will be quicker. Also, the other big thing that we're talking about here, and I think this is a huge advantage for the digital versus what we were doing in film, is that now we are taking the collection, which was primarily a black and white collection, and transitioning it into primarily color collection. And let's be honest, I mean, look at this church in here. We are talking about the color of the stained glass, the
yeah.
differences in the material, the different wood that's being used.
Yeah.
And you can tell a lot about wood based on what color it is and the grain that's in it and everything.
Yeah.
So now we're going to have this additional information, which is going to help provide more substance to the surveys.
Wow. So you're using these phase 1 100 megapixel trichromatic cameras. So tell me a little bit about the difference as far as like the colors. Like, I mean, I don't want to dive too deep into color science or any of that kind of stuff, but I mean, you know, tell me a little bit more as far as like how playing with stained glass and this kind of sensor.
Well, I mean, this sensor was designed for color reproduction, which is the reason why when I was looking through the different backs that were provided by phase 1, this was the one that I chose to go with because I wanted color accurate imagery. Sometimes it can be a little bit too accurate because we're talking about mixed lighting situations,
Yeah.
so that can throw things off and you got to go in there and tweak a little bit here and a little bit there.
Right.
But yeah, that's really the reason why I wanted to do this with this back. Now with the new 150 megapixel back, I wouldn't mind moving over that way because of the back illuminated sensor technology that's been included into that. This sensor is still the traditional CMOS sensor.
Yeah.
But the back illumination will give us more dynamic range, not in the sense of more stops, but in the sense of noise capabilities, which is very important.
Yeah.
This sensor is still a little touch and go there, but it's still, compared to the backs of yesteryear, this is way better, way better. So
That's cool.
yeah.
Very cool. Well, you know, I'm not going to try to take up too much of your time. I guess I'm going to kind of wrap up with this kind of quick question. So, do you miss shooting film?
I mean, I will always love shooting film,
Yeah.
and I think that in some ways, film was more forgiving in the sense of using flash in conjunction with ambient light.
Yeah.
I've noticed that with this, because we don't have reciprocity times, you got 30 seconds to make the light happen. It's 30 seconds, it's 30 seconds. Whereas with film, it was like 30 seconds. Oh, actually, I got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And the flash will interact with the camera.
Yeah.
The same way as it would if it was a 30th of a second, and the aperture is what's controlling that flash.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference, and I miss that aspect of it. And there's also something to be said for like sitting down and like with your book and doing all the calculations. I like that part of it.
Yeah.
But in a production environment like this, where you're expected to go out and get lots of photographs and then process them over, a period of time and have all these things done by the end of the fiscal year, I do not miss film at all.
Yeah, no, you bring a very valid point, because I mean, it's all about workflow. I totally understand. So much more happens after the shot. Especially with film, you had to develop it. You had to do prints of it to see how it's going to come out on a physical medium. And then you had to have somebody that had to scan it in to get it into a digital archive. So, I mean, you're still able to do it with digital, and I don't think, but some people are here are probably like freaking out, going, no, you need to do it on film. And, the National Archive System said that, hey, we can't accept digital. And it is something that you guys are really navigating now, right?
Well, it was more like, and that's the thing with the film that I really like, because the negative is a physical copy that you can use continuously over and over again. Once you have it. But that's the reason why now with this we're talking about putting more emphasis on a larger print.
Yeah.
Not much larger. It's an 8x10,
Sure.
as opposed to contact print of 5x7.
Right. So let me ask you this. You documented much of Ellis Island, well, all of Ellis Island on film. So you did primarily black and white throughout that entire process. And then this is the last day of a 30-day trip all throughout Alabama documenting the civil rights movement. What are some of the biggest differences that you've noticed as far as like your workflow between Ellis Island and this one?
I mean, realistically, there isn't too much of a change in the workflow other than I have a computer, I'm connected to this, I can check the photos right now. So that's really the big difference, I would say, sitting here talking about it, is that with the large format, once the shot was done, and I would just be moving on to the next shot. Whereas now, after I do, I click the shutter and the photo's done, I'm actually going into the computer and analyzing the RGB values, the luminance values, making sure everything is nice and tight so that when I get back to the main office, I can do what I need to do on the back end. So there is like this little lull in the action now where I'm kind of sitting around and messing around on a computer and just tweaking color, tweaking values.
After seeing your process, where you're holding the white card in front of it and you're gauging, where the exposures are falling off or where the light is falling off in certain areas, was absolutely fascinating. That was something that was new to me. What are some of the technical nuances that you're having to kind of watch out for now in this one?
Basically, with this, you're always kind of looking for the sweet spot in the exposure, because what I've noticed with this, you're really protecting the highlights. Whereas in film, you're always shooting for the shadows.
Yep.
And so here it's trying to find that nice balance where you're getting enough shadow detail that you're not going to pump up the exposure and get a bunch of noise, but not blowing out the highlights. I mean, you're really constantly on the edge all the time with the highlights, because I've noticed even if there's just a little bit of a blowout, once you start getting the blooming,
it's not desirable.
You're not getting it back. Once that light spills out, so to speak, out of that pixel and you start getting that effect, you can sit there and edit that all day. You're never going to get rid of that.
Sure.
So it's always trying to find this sweet balance of like, well, when is just a little bit of that okay? Because that part of the photo isn't critical, or when is it, when do I need to make sure that that's really in check?
Yeah.
When can the shadows be a little bit deeper? Or when is it that I need to really dig into the shadows and maybe a blown out window doesn't matter at all?
Right.
It's constantly that give and take.
That's cool. Well, man, I'm going to let you get back to it here. You are really busy. I know today's the last day, and you're ready to go back home and get back to the office a little bit.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Well, Jarob, thank you, man. Always
Thank
a pleasure.
You,
and thanks for having me out here. Truly an honor, sir.
Sure thing. Anytime.
All right. All right. Unfortunately, it is time for me to leave. Jarob, man. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And
nice having you along.
No, dude, this was cool. You guys hiring?
Architects.
Yeah. No, I'm architect stupid. So, but this was amazing, man. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to check out your process, and I learned a lot, dude. Even though, like, hey, I know this was digital, but this was an amazing opportunity to check out your process and to see how you're documenting all this stuff. This is huge. And I mean, the civil rights movement here, we don't think about it. I mean, it was only 60 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not that long ago.
Not even 60 years
Yeah.
ago.
So, I mean, it's fascinating that the government is taking a very strong effort in documenting and preserving all this, and that's fantastic. So
absolutely.
well, thanks again, dude, and I'm sad to go.
Yeah, hey. We'll cross paths again.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, let's get out of here. All right, man. Well, I'm a little sad I gotta leave from this. Jarob was really cool to allow me to hang out with him for a little bit. A big thank you to the Birmingham Civil Rights Heritage Trail and also Bethel Baptist Church. They were absolutely awesome, really accommodating to allow me to be here and talk about this place as well. So that is going to be it for this episode. I'm going to head back home. I got a couple hour drive, and that's pretty much it. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and shoot some film, dang it.